Hey, question for you. Do you think, by chance, we were pre-programmed for only, 50, 60 healthy years of life? And I only ask because if you look at our immune system setup, it kinda seems that way. Yeah, you know what? Why don't you just hear me out and decide for yourself. Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and mildly sarcastic way. Today we are exploring a little known immune organ which holds the keys to fighting off biological enemies, and how it, well, disappears as we age, potentially being one of the reasons we face more and more disease and susceptibility to infection as we age. This little fig-like organ is the thymus. Yep, told you probably never heard of it, but you will sure be glad that you have it, because it is one of the few training centers for our adaptive immune system, or the part of the immune system which is able to identify a specific intruder and coordinate a full-fledged attack without damaging any other parts of the body. A feat that our initial responders, the innate immune system, could only dream of. But we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Now, here is the longevity dilemma and the reason this video is being made. It has been observed that this critical immune organ begins its steady yet consistent demise basically from the seconds we come out of the womb, slowly losing its mass and function little by little throughout childhood, to the point where it's about half its original mass by the age of 25. And I wish I could say that's where it stops, but unfortunately, the deterioration continues until it is almost completely gone by the ripe old age of 70 or so. Gone with it, the many benefits it brings to the longevity table, which we'll talk about right now, exploring at the end if and what we can do to preserve its function, or even flip the switch and regenerate this Harry Houdini-like organ. But first, let's get acquainted with the thymus. This small, upside-down pear-looking organ sits right in the center of our upper chest, and its primary function is to develop and educate the T cells of our adaptive immune system, the part of our immune system which is precise and specific in its response, only being called onto the battlefield when there is a real problem brewing. Think of these T cells as your body's special forces division, waiting to receive information from the innate immune system, or your first lines of defenses, before deciding if it needs to ramp up millions of specialized and trained immune assassins to target and attack a specific threat, like a virus or bacterium. Pretty gnarly, right? Bringing us to the main reason the thymus is so critical and important, and that's the fact that our immune T cells left to their own devices are pretty dumb. It is what it is. And if they are not educated or trained properly, they'd end up attacking things that we don't want them to attack. For example, our healthy cells. The cells we need to do biological things, and thus do this right here, right now. Watch YouTube. Yeah, important stuff. Creating a not so cool for biological school situation. A situation that unfortunately happens often enough that it has its own clinical diagnosis. Autoimmunity, an overarching condition which affects hundreds of millions of people worldwide. A condition we'll dive into more a little later. Long story short, the thymus is the area where our T cells get educated and turn from dumb, immature cells to warrior scholars. Right on. And just to give you some perspective on how tough this education process is, it's estimated that only about 2% of T cells make it through this gauntlet training, while the rest fail the test and are programmed to kick the biological bucket via apoptosis or programmed cell death. And because all of this is just so very interesting, here's a glimpse of what actually goes on in this training center. Every single day, immature T cells that originate in your bone marrow migrate up into the thymus. Here they initiate a process called genetic rearrangement, and it is just what it sounds like, kind of. This is when genes that encode for T cell receptors, or TCRs, undergo a random rearrangement process. Why in the world would they do this, you ask? Because the T cell receptor is the key for identifying and fighting a pathogen. So we actually proactively randomly create T cells with receptors for every possible pathogen we may ever face. I mean, every possible threat, almost all of which will never be used. Never say your body doesn't have your back. From here, the education process begins. The thymus first exposes these T cells to self-proteins, or molecules specific to your body, and eliminate all the T cells with T cell receptors that react to these self-proteins. This prevents the production of T cells that would attack your own tissue and cause situations like autoimmunity. Pretty elegant, right? But it don't stop there. Next, the surviving T cells go through another selection process, this time with a wider range of self-antigens. And again, the T cells with T cell receptors that react to these proteins are eliminated. From here, these specialized killers, collectively equipped with receptors for every possible foreign antigen, enter the body, where they then take up residence in one of the many hundreds of lymph nodes, or little immune gathering spots which lie all throughout the body, patiently waiting until they're needed for action, which is hopefully never. But if they were to be activated, the specific T cell with the right receptor to fight the pathogen causing the problem will begin to multiply by the millions and enter the battlefield. Pretty cool, I know. And I also know that was a lot. And this was the simplified version of what actually happens. There is a lot of nuance and a lot of things we still don't know. But hopefully now you understand why the thymus is not only pretty awesome, but pretty damn important, because without it, we would have a dramatically impaired ability to defend against strong and novel infections, to surveil, identify, and kill cancer, or our abnormal self cells that go rogue, and regulate the immune system as a whole, preventing excess reactions that could damage healthy tissue, like what happens with autoimmunity. Not cool. So this little immune organ deserves some hype, or a, Dundee or something. Someone give the thymus a Dundee, please. Especially since chronic inflammation, or the low-dose arousal of the immune system, is one of, if not the biggest, longevity liability that we modern intelligent walking apes face. Which brings us to a point that I think we'd all agree on. And that's keeping this organ primed, fruitful, and pumping is probably a good idea. An idea that is, unfortunately, pretty impossible to carry out, at least today. Because, for whatever reason, and as alluded to in the intro, beginning from when we're just a baby, thymus mass and function starts its down-only descent. Interestingly being replaced by none other than our favorite bodily tissue, fat. Ultimately becoming a fraction of what it once was by middle age, and nearly all gone for the average person by their 7th or 8th decade, bringing with it a decrease in T cell production and training along the way. And as you can imagine, this decline in thymic function has been associated with a weakened immune system, and is thought to be one of the main reasons for the increase in our susceptibility for infection and age-related disease. Prime examples being infections from viruses and bacteria, cancer, and autoimmunity. All with no real understanding for why it all goes down like this. Other than the evolutionary theory that by the time we reach our later years, there's less of an incentive to have this function and organ around because we are well out of our procreation window. So the body just lets it slowly dissolve away. But again, just theory. Now, with all that being said, it's not just like we're being thrown to the pathogen wolves here either. As I'm sure you've seen and potentially know, many people still alive and kicking in their 80s, 90s, and even 100s. I mean, look at the United States Congress. Except, I don't know if we'd officially consider them kicking, But we digress. By the time we enter our 7th and 8th decades of life, we have a fair share of existing T-cell memory, or T-cells that have been produced by the thymus before its decline, that can still provide some level of protection, especially against any previously encountered pathogens. And we also still keep our innate immune system capabilities, which is that non-specific arm of the immune system response. The arm that just attacks everything, hoping to neutralize the threat before it gets out of hand. Not ideal for the long term, but still something. However, when it comes to adaptive immunity, the reality is, when the thymus is gone, the adaptive immune system's ability to fight new threats is significantly compromised, which ain't cool for longevity school, and begs the worthwhile question: is there a way to delay this thymus shrinkage? Or even, dare I say, regenerate it? Welcome to the dubious speculation portion of the show. And unfortunately, unlike many areas of the body which show natural regeneration skill sets, all data points to the thymus not being one of them. However, this is a very active area of research and has piqued the interest of many longevity enthusiasts and companies alike, ultimately providing a lot of reasons to be optimistic, as researchers are exploring various avenues to potentially improve T-cell function or mimic thymic activity in adults, including, but not limited to, modulating thymic hormones, developing stem cell therapy, and leveraging dietary and lifestyle factors. For example, a breakthrough study in 2023 identified stem cells in the thymus for the very first time, creating hope that these stem cells may have the potential to regenerate the thymic epithelium, or the part of the thymus responsible for T-cell development. And researchers were even able to activate these stem cells in a lab setting. Pretty cool. But there is still a long way to go. Moving to lifestyle, there is also strong evidence supporting the benefits of high-quality sleep, a nutrient-rich diet, consistent exercise, and adequate nature exposure on our immune system function and precision, as well as a clear association between chronic stress and impaired immune function. And who could forget our daily lifestyle's impact on creating and maintaining strong bodily barriers, as discussed here, which makes it straight up harder for harmful pathogens to get into the hottest biological club in town. Club? Circulation. Your circulation. So although we may not have a way to directly restore and rejuvenate thymic function yet, there are still many ways to sway your odds, likelihood, and probability of a long, healthy, prosperous life ever in your favor, reducing risk of dysfunction, which would ultimately increase your susceptibility for disease, and keeping your immune system as functional and precise as possible for as long as possible. So don't be a passive participant. Take charge and charge on. Adopt the warrior spirit, just like that army you got within, and help them help you already.